In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds.
Tonight on America in Black and White, we welcome a man whose life's work has shaped the economic landscape of the Southeast and elevated the visibility, viability, and voice of Black-owned businesses for more than 4 decades. Gerry McCants is not simply a business advisor. He is an architect of opportunity, a strategist who has helped cities, states, corporations, and communities understand the power, potential, and promise of minority and women-owned business enterprises. A publisher who amplified Black commerce long before digital platforms existed. A connector whose influence stretches from Greensboro to Wilmington, from Virginia to London, and across the entire Southeast region. His story is one of legacy, a legacy rooted in the wisdom of his grandfather, the strength of his grandmother, and the determination of his mother. These 3 pillars shaped a man who has dedicated his life to building ecosystems where Black businesses can thrive, compete, and lead. Tonight, we explore his journey, his mission, and the blueprint he continues to build for generations to come. This is episode 88. This is history, strategy, and community in motion. This is America in Black and White, and let's welcome Mr. Gerry McCants to the show.
How you doing, Charles?
Hello, sir. How are you? I don't see you. I see a chair.
I'm not sure why you see a chair. Let me see what's going on here.
Oh, maybe that's your virtual background is
right.
Yeah.
How do I get rid of that?
Maybe if you go to your settings there at your camera and turn off the mirror.
Okay. It's still there. Hold on a second. How do I get rid of that?
I can actually see. There you go. I see you now.
Yeah, I don't want to see all that stuff in the background. That's.
Oh.
Hold on a second. Let me get out of here. That works.
Yes, sir. So, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we get into the show?
Charles, I'm just happy to be here. I want to learn a lot more about the impact that you're having as well, but I'm happy to answer, any questions and hopefully provide some guidance as we move forward through this podcast.
Yes, sir. First, we got some folk that's just coming in, and everyone is saying hello, and I want to say hello to all of you that's here in the chat here in the beginning. I'll put that on the screen for you, Gerry.
Okay.
And, you know, I want to tell everyone thank you, and I'm happy that you're here. And, you know, we're going to get into the show now. Let's start with you here, Gerry, where we get to learn a little bit about your earlier influences in life. Who was Gerry McCants before the titles, the leadership roles, and the business legacy?
That's a funny question. Actually, you know, my mother was here. She would say his name is Gerry and not Gerry. Yeah,
Okay.
she would correct so many people all the time about that. But
I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, you good? You good? I mean, hey, I had to do that 20% of the time. But Gerry was the little boy growing up in Columbia, South Carolina, just like every other kid, a prankster, pretty much. You know, always athletic, always having a good time. And you know, I thought about this yesterday. I said, you know, some of this leadership ability came from being a kid and really being the oldest kid of our peers, but the youngest amongst all the people that was much older than I am, because we were always together, and they taught me a lot how to be who I was and how to lead others. So that's pretty much who I was.
So what was your childhood like growing up in Virginia and North Carolina?
Well, my childhood was growing up in Columbia, South Carolina. You know, I say that as a child in Columbia, South Carolina, you are aware of what's going on, whether socially and economically. And, you know, even though we grew up in a pretty good community, all Black community in Greenview, what was the name of the neighborhood, and we grew up around people who were farmers and doctors and, you know, military folk and educators. We probably was, you know, for my family, we probably were poor, but we didn't know we were poor because we always had people in the community that we could rely on and we could depend on, and that was a good thing. And you know, after my mother and father divorced, and me and my little brother was there, we had to quickly grow up because you know nobody was going to be looking out for our interests other than my mother and, you know, my extended family, my grandmother and grandfather and aunts and uncles. But we had to really grow up really fast in that community.
So when you think about your earliest memories of leadership, what moments stand out most to you?
It's a good question. As a little boy or growing up as a young man, that's a twofold question.
Yes, sir. Well, this is where you've moved along past the younger stage.
Okay. I tell you what, I was at Virginia Union is my alma mater. So when I left Columbia and went to Virginia Union, I said, you know, this is the place that really saved my life, because everybody that was in a leadership role there was Black. And, you know, that was a major transformation for me, because this is where I needed to be, particularly after leaving high school and, you know, getting into some things I shouldn't have been getting into in high school, and, you know, being an athlete, which brought me to Virginia Union. And I told my coach from the summer league, I said, look, when he came and said, hey, Gerry, you ready to leave? I said, no, coach, you can go. I'm staying right here. I'm not going anywhere. I was happy to be there. The people that I met there were mentors. And I said, you know, this is where I need to be. I need to be at Virginia Union in Richmond, Virginia. So that led me throughout those years in being an athlete, you know, pledging, obviously being an Omega, and just meeting all kinds of people from all over the place. And, you know, that's what groomed me.
So when you reflect on those moments from, you know, when you think of now and you think back then, what are some of the things that you have brought forward with you that have been a mainstay that's contributed to your success and a continued leader?
Work ethic. I mean, I started working when I was about 12, 13 years old. And, you know, always had a job, even in college. Even though I was on scholarship and grants and all that, I still always had a job. And I always was able to be independent and take care of myself and didn't have to depend on somebody sending me money to do whatever I needed to do. I worked, and I work study jobs. So that sort of work ethic, I would say. And then all the people around me were always industrious. And so being an athlete, being around professors who instilled in you that, look, you know, you're gonna have to get it. Nobody's gonna take care of you. You gotta take care of your own self. And then when I moved off campus in an apartment, even though I was still in school playing basketball and things of that nature, that gave me a totally different outlook.
So how did your grandfather shape your understanding of manhood and responsibility?
Seeing when my mother took us to the country, as we called it, in Manning, South Carolina, I used to see my grandfather and his sons get on that wagon with the mule, you know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was a little boy, but I'd see them get on that mule. They wouldn't come back until late in the evening. So they worked. You know, everything that we did came off of that farm, you know, and so that's where I learned. I mean, it was a self-sufficient operation, even though they didn't have a lot. They didn't even have running water when we used to go down there initially. You had to go out to the well and get the water and then heat it up and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people would understand that, my age. But I saw that and I said, you know what? You know, this is a powerful image of what my grandfather and grandmother and mother and my aunts and uncles were doing. They took care of the farm. So that's what I learned.
So what lessons from your grandmother still guide your decisions today?
Carrie Daney. Look, she was the head of the household. You know, everything that needed to be done. Look, my grandmother and grandfather had 14 children.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, you couldn't be the last one to the table. So she took care of the house and making sure that everything was prepared. As I told people, that wood stove got a lot of work. And, you know, me and my little brother used to, sometimes we hate to go down there because my mother would leave us. We like, this is a strange place. We're not used to this. But we got used to it and it was fun. And we had cousins that would come down from Baltimore and some of these other cities up north. And we had a lot of good times. But she was, you know, she was the person that took care of the house and made sure everything was squared away when my grandfather and uncles got back from off that farm, you know, out of the tobacco fields or wherever they were.
So did you ever partake in going out there and doing work on the farm?
No. I was trying to keep all those bugs, those giant bugs that I'd never seen before. Like, no, I didn't get a chance to do that. No.
You know, I guess that's, you know, when you're in the city, I think we all call it up the country because you know, I think back when I was a kid and when we would go visit family up in the country, You know, one thing that I can say you are definitely right about them bugs. I've never seen
Oh,
bugs that big
yeah,
before in my life.
yeah, yeah. It was treacherous for a minute, but we got used to it. Yeah.
So, how did your mother influence your work ethic and your commitment to community?
My mother was a disciplinarian. She taught me how to read and write before I went to school. I mean, that's what she was doing with me. She was in there teaching us how to read and write and count and all that kind of good stuff. So when we went off to school as little boys, we were sort of prepared. My daddy was in the military, so he was, in and out. But they were kind of disciplinary kind of people. And I think that was a learned habit, a tradition coming from my grandparents. And even on my father's side, his mother and father were about the same. I mean, you came in there and it was like quiet as a mouse. You didn't say anything. You didn't talk back. When they gave you that look, that was it. You did what you had to do. And so my mother had those traits. And then, after my mother and father divorced, being a single parent during the 60s and 70s, that's a tough life for a Black woman. And so she had to do whatever she had to do to make sure she took care of her family.
So, what values did your family instill that became foundational to your career?
Very good question. Work. I mean, bottom line, you're not going to sleep all day and eat all day and do whatever you play all day unless you got to work. Whether it's whatever you had to do, motor grass. Mother used to wake us up and she have us washing the walls. I thought she was crazy. I was like, what in the world am I doing? That's what she had us doing. You're going to find something to do. So we washed the walls and, scrubbed the floors and, cut hedges. So it was always something to do. You didn't get, there was no idle time to we playing around. And I tell people this story too. Also, Charles, I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to be an athlete and I, coach at the junior high. I said, man, come on out. My mother told me straight up, you're not playing basketball, you're going to work. So I went against her and I went up to the school and made the team in like 2 days. She drove up to that school and took me off of that court and said, I told you, you're not playing. You won't work. Look, that's all I needed.
Right.
She told me, you're going to work. You all that other stuff is fine, but you got to work. So I did what I had to do.
When did you first realize you had a gift for business strategy and community engagement?
I think growing up just in the neighborhood, and then we moved from one neighborhood, which was all Black, to a integrated neighborhood, which was kind of interesting because that was a culture shock. I mean, we didn't see anybody outside of our community that didn't look like us until we got to the place we moved to when I went to high school. And I was like, oh my goodness, we were the only Black family on that street in that neighborhood. And went to a high school that had a lot of problems. Even though I loved the school I went to, Eau Claire High, it was a lot of problems, a lot of kind of gang related issues too. So that was a different kind of culture for me because I wasn't used to that in all Black community. We didn't do stuff like that. You did what your parents and your parents gave the neighbors, told you, hey, look, if they get out of line, you discipline them as well. So I think a lot of that discipline and work ethic and even though we played like everybody else, pranksters and all that kind of, me and my little brother, you didn't do certain things. When the lights went off on those streets, you were in the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that was universal in all Black communities. The street
exactly.
lights, you got to be in the house.
So I'm glad I'm not the only one that knows about that. Because look, when that street light hit, you better be inside quick. And so it was a different kind of culture. We moved into that other neighborhood because I walk a quarter of a mile up the street and I would be in the projects. And when I saw what was going on there, I was like, what in the world are these folk doing over here? And my mother warned us, I don't ever want to see you going to those projects. I ended up going over there hanging out. Yeah. It is what it is. So you learn, and so connecting and understanding how to navigate different neighborhoods and different cultures. And I worked in high school all 4 years. I worked in a restaurant. So after basketball practice, during my sophomore year, I had to go to work. And so I was in another environment, working for a Greek restaurant, a Greek owner, navigating with people that I didn't know. So I had to learn all that stuff. And so that kind of gave me a chance to network. And, and all the young people can understand that when you're in a community where you got some real issues, you're going to have to be able to communicate and get yourself out of some stuff, particularly when you're not supposed to be there. And so I learned a lot of that.
So what was the first major challenge you overcame as a young professional?
I say this to a lot of people. After I finished college, I got a job immediately because I did an internship with the company now is Dominion Energy. It used to be Virginia Electric Power Company. So I had a job. And so it was easy for me. It was easy for me to get up, go to work, do what I had to do. I walked to work every day because I lived midtown. And so it was good. It was fun. It was an opportunity to be in corporate America. And then after a while, I didn't like corporate America. I didn't like the routineness of it. I didn't like the sort of boxed in environment. And I wanted to move into public relations. I was in sort of an admin job doing records management. And they told me straight up, there are no black people in this department, so you're not going very far here. So I'm telling you. And then I decided to say, you know what? Let me try to go in the Marine Corps. So that's Marine Corps Reserve. Took a leave of absence. Did my boot camp down in Paris Island, came back. After a few months, I took off and went to Charlotte.
So how did your sociology and urban studies background shape your worldview?
One of the most important lessons I learned from being a sociology major in urban studies was from my counselor, Florence Bay. The coach had given me sort of a mandate because I needed to take a class between 3 and 6. And he told me straight up, he said, I told you, my time is between 3 and 6. If you take that class, you can't play. And so I went back to Florence Bay and I said, Ms. Bay, coach is telling me if I take this class, I'm not going to be the player. She said, Gerry, you got a decision to make. Either you want to play basketball or you want to graduate. Sociology 101. I'm out of here.
Oh man.
We had some tough professors and they were straight, realistic. They didn't hold no punches. And at Virginia Union, they knew what they were talking about. And I made the decision, hey, time for me to give this up. I need to finish school. And so dealing with that and dealing with the culture and all your friends and all that stuff, I said, hey, I'm good.
Let's move over and talk a little bit about your education and professional formation. What did attending Virginia Union University teach you about leadership and service?
I think number one, all of the people in Richmond, whether they were the mayors or city council, they all graduated from Virginia Union. And so, L. Douglas Wilder, the first Black elected governor, graduated from Virginia Union. Frank Royal, medical doctor, left a significant, one of the first Black founders of the Black Hospital in Richmond, graduated from Union. A lot of my fraternity brothers were some from Virginia and Richmond and DC and some. So there was a huge community there, and Richmond itself was impactful because of the culture, and it was probably 55%, 60% Black. So, all the people that I saw at the basketball games, they were all in leadership roles. So I wanted to be like them. I thought I was in the right place at the right time. And they if you did something, they would tell you about it. And so they followed us in athletics. A lot of the people that was in the fraternity, whether they were, Omegas like me or Kappas or Alphas or whoever they were, Sigmas, and the sorority, they would tell you, look, you're here to get an education. You're here to do X, Y, Z. This is what our expectations are. And we were a close-knit family on that campus. And so we had inroads with the community. Henry Marsh was the mayor during that time. I mean, really? I mean, if you're talking about something historic, the whole, affirmative action legislation behind some of that, with him being mayor, wanted to give Black companies at least 30 to 35% of public contracts in the city of Richmond. That was Henry Marsh. He was a Virginia Union graduate. So all that was impactful. So I learned a lot from a lot of that, and it just stuck with me.
So as you think about that today, and those things were going on where you really had real community, and you really had the unity and the togetherness, from the student body as well as from your instructors. What can you tell people out in the audience that's listening right now, and for some of those younger people that want to get into leadership? What are some things that you can tell them, some tips you can give them as to what should they be doing and thinking about and wanting to go into leadership?
Well, first of all, you need to surround yourself with the right people. I mean, everybody wants to be your friend, but they're not your friend. And you need to be selective as you possibly can. Just like playing basketball, all those people screaming in the stands. I mean, that's good, but they're not your friends. They're just having a good time. And so you got to separate that from what your focus is and what you have to do in order to, improve your career or whatever you're trying to do. And quite frankly, there were a lot of smart people, a lot smarter than I was. And so I wanted to be like those people. I didn't want to be the kid that didn't know anything. I wanted to be just like them, and I wanted to be smart, and I wanted to be independent. And I think the culture at Virginia Union, being in that kind of environment, the Union was in an all-Black community, and the folk there were good. They were good people. And so I think for young people, people my age, we kind of get some of this, but for the young folk coming behind us, find the right people to model, to follow and to ask questions about and learn from. And you're going to have good times, but at some point in time, you got to look at yourself and say, okay, I got this much time on the clock. How much time am I going to spend doing this, this, and this? And draw that line, draw the line down the sand and go from 1 to 25, 25 years old, go from 25 to 50, and go from 50 to wherever you're going. Because you only got time. Time is your biggest asset. And so if you can maximize whatever you're trying to do, the time you have, some people want to be super rich. If that's what you want to do, it's going to take work and it's going to take time.
And so how did the Tuck School of Business executive program elevate your approach to business development?
My partner, who's in Columbia, Darren Thomas, I got to give Darren credit, because Darren and I went through a lot of things starting our business. And, there was a little firm in Columbia that helped us prepare to go to Tuck. And Tuck had, I don't know how many people were in that program that year, maybe 50 or 60 from all over the country. And they all smart. and they all have businesses. I mean, you're not the smartest kid in the room. These folks know what they're doing. And then you had Dartmouth, one of the top business schools in the world. Yeah, you're gonna learn something. So we went there with our eyes wide open, and we sucked up every bit of information we possibly can, and we worked every day we were there. I mean, you got a little bit of time off, but they want you in training sessions, they want you in group settings, they want you to do all this stuff, make sure you know everything about your business. And that was powerful. That was very impactful, and one of the best trainings you could ever get as an entrepreneur.
So when you think back on those times now, what is the one thing that sticks out most to you right now that you carry forward?
There's so many things. I can't think of just one, but let me tell you something. I think one of the things, when you're trying to attempt whatever goal or whatever you're trying to do in life, you have to be disciplined, and you're going to have to be focused. And many days I drove from Portsmouth, Virginia, when I lived there, to Columbia, South Carolina, 6-7 hours just to start my first Black pages.
Mm-hmm.
And then had to turn back around and come back. I did that for 2 years without even being paid. We didn't put money in our pocket, and that was, and on top of that, I was in a car accident going to see a client in Columbia that morning and broke my leg.
Oh, wow.
In 1990. That was, look, but you know what? Didn't stop me from getting on the phone and making calls, and whatever rehab I had to do, I did the rehab. But at the end of the day, I was determined that I was going to do that. And I, when I worked for the Journal and Guide, I got a Black newspaper in Norfolk. That gave me a chance. You talked about networking, gave me a chance to meet Black entrepreneurs and professionals and people who were doing it, doctors, lawyers. I met everybody. And I loved that job. And people were good. They mentored me. Wasn't anybody that I didn't meet. Somebody gave me some nuggets, some good knowledge that I could take with me and put it to use. And that job set the sort of the groundwork for me going into the Black pages, because I worked for somebody else for 2 or 3 years, a guy named David Walton out of Richmond. I worked for him. And then I said, you know what? I can do this. I can be independent. I can be an entrepreneur. I can do all these great things. And, outside of all the other training that I had with serving on boards at an early age that I didn't know anything about, and networking and chairing the first Minority Advisory Council in Hampton Roads for the United Way, I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, but somebody thought I knew what I was doing. So I did it.
So tell us about that job, because I think what's interesting about that is that it sounds like it had a major impact for your success going forward. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there was a lady there, rest in peace, Cleola Butler, that saw the Black pages, and the United Way in Southampton Roads was going through some transitions. They wanted to hire a new president, and she called me and said, "Hey, look, I need you to serve on this committee, the Minority Advisory Council." I don't know what that is, and I mean, I'm serious. I didn't know what that was, and so I came in there, and all these seasoned veterans around the table, African American, and I was the chair, first African American chair of that council, and I also served on the board of the United Way. So that was a powerful installation. Being involved with that board and all these CEOs that I knew nothing about. And it was powerful. And that really had an impact on me. It sort of changed the dynamic of what I thought about corporate America and how you need to understand who the players are. So I learned who the players are. And quite frankly, when I was trying to get access to the CEO for Centura at that time, hospital, he was on the board of the United Way. And so I built a relationship with him. And he invited me in his office, and that's how I started doing business with the Black pages with Centura Hospital, which was a good thing. Man, I was like, man, wow, is that all it takes? Yep. And so I sat on some other boards, YMCA, Urban League, sickle cell, a bunch of stuff, So it was good stuff.
So, what impact did Babson College's entrepreneurship education program have on your consulting job?
I met a lady from Norfolk State who had some extra funding to go to Babson, which is a entrepreneur school in Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And these are people from all over the world. I mean, I was in a room with about 60 to 70 people, maybe 100, from Paris, from Portugal, from Germany. I mean, they were from everywhere. So it was an educator symposium. We had a couple of HBCUs in there from some other places, but man, you quickly understand that we all have some of the similar, same issues, and you got to work with these people. And we came up with an idea to eliminate poverty. I cannot put my hands on that document. If I could, I'd probably be a billionaire by now. But that's what we did. So it made you think outside of the box. It made you work hard. It made you work with people that, even though you couldn't speak the language to some of the folk, and you did what you had to do to make things successful. I enjoyed that. I can't look. Last name was Professor. Was it Melissa? I can't think of her last name. It was good stuff. Really good stuff.
So now that you're now you're internationally known. You're making these connections here like none other.
Yeah.
And making these connections. Tell us what were you thinking then, and how do you feel now, knowing that you had the opportunity to not only just sit and be a part of all of this growth, but now you are the growth?
That's a good question. I had a chance, even at Virginia Union, we went to Africa, which was the first time I had ever been out of the country. The basketball team went over to Africa. We played over there. And, it was a big experience for me. And then later on, I went on a trade mission in Virginia to London to meet with some business owners, Black business owners in London. And so all of that experience and knowledge has helped me over the years navigate the waters and understand that, whether you like somebody or not, whether you want to work with them or not, you still have to work with these people. And, everybody's not going to always agree with what you're saying or agree with what you're doing. But the bottom line is these people respect who you are and respect what you're doing. And if you're doing a good job at it, I say keep doing it, because it's going to have some impact on somebody or something that you're doing. And trust me, I've met a lot of people from the Black pages over all these years, up and down the East Coast, business owners, male and female, who are doing great things. And people just, they don't understand that there are people out there that look just like you and me who are doing excellent stuff and who are successful at doing it. And we need to raise that up versus all the other stuff that we talk about.
So, how did your academic journey prepare you for the work you do today?
You had to bring that part up, right? Look, I learned quickly. I was pleasured. My French teacher told me, if you don't get these grades up, I'm going to fail you. I didn't believe it. I thought she was joking. And guess what? She flagged me. So nothing I could do about that. I had to turn around, take that class over again under somebody else. Same thing with economics. Dr. Singh told me, Mr. McCants, if you don't do this, you're going to fail. And look, he gave me a low grade. I had to come back and take it over. So I think my academic journey was great, but I had a lot of distractions. I wasn't the A+ student. You know, I did what I had to do to get out of Virginia Union. And I tell people my last year after I quit basketball, I had 18 hours worth of classes. So, and I had a part-time security job from working graveyard shift from 6 to 6 in the morning, 2 or 3 days a week. I have no time to do anything else. So, people who want to get something done, they find a way to do it. And in most cases, if they stick to it, they have discipline, they've got good people around them, they focus, they're going to get it done. Not that hard.
So what advice do you give young entrepreneurs about education versus experience?
You only get one shot. If you're going to invest in college, whatever the dollar amount is, or trade school, or whatever training you have, man, take advantage of it. Particularly in this day and time with technology and all this stuff that's going on. You've got to be competitive. You got to be creative. You got to know how to navigate whatever the situation. You got to be able to communicate with people. You just can't look on social media all day. There's some things you're going to have to learn how to do. And you got to have good negotiating skills. So stick with it. Don't waste a whole lot of time on all the other stuff that we do.
So let's talk a little bit about McCants LLC and your business advisory work. What inspired you to launch McCants LLC?
I had some clients that wanted some other kind of work done. They were expanding their companies, and they said, "Man, you've been doing all this stuff, and you know a lot of people. Can you connect with me with so and so? You're in the political circus too. You're dealing with politicians. I need to meet so and so to have a conversation with so and so." So that's what I did. I started this business to do that. Just connecting the dots. Always was great at it. I mean, if I can't do anything else, I can connect you to somebody. Trust me, and I can get in a room. So that was part of the gift that I had and what I learned over the years.
So let's go back to you're now internationally known. So now, so you are Mr. Connector.
Yeah. I've been able to do some things. Thank goodness and thank God that I've been able to do the things I'm doing, because it could have easily gone left. And I made the right moves at the right time. I was able to work through a lot of things and be independent. And look, I know a lot of people. People know me for that. And so that gives me the kind of access I need to put people in the room that they need to be in.
How would you describe the mission and heartbeat of your company?
Well, two companies, because I have the Greensboro Business League, which is a nonprofit as well. Earl Jones and I are the co-founders of that organization, a business advocacy group. I think the heartbeat is, people trust us. Mm-hmm. And they trust our knowledge. They trust, our intelligence, and they trust that we can get them in the rooms that they can't get in. And so that's always been a core factor for me. And people tell me, even from people I went to school with, man, you always used to be talking about this black stuff. Where did this come from? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was Florence Bay. I don't know. Maybe it was Jack Sharp. I don't know where that came from. But, Pearl Mankins, Black History. So, but, that's the heartbeat of what we do. We are connectors. We are bridge builders. The fraternity has given me an opportunity to do things as well. I've been in leadership roles, NAACP as well, still involved with the NAACP. And I tell people, find an organization that you feel connected to and that you want to be committed to. You don't have to do it all the time, but work at it.
So, what is the moment? What is the most common challenge, shall I say, that you see among businesses seeking your guidance?
Well, we're doing an event on June 23rd here in Greensboro, and our focus is going to be mobilizing capital. We want to eliminate that hurdle. We want to put people in the right rooms with the right people who can talk to them about capital needs, whether it's private equity, whether it's loan capital, whatever it is. We've got to overcome that part and understand that we can create our own ecosystem to do that. And then we got one presenter coming out of Florida, Jonathan Rosado, who has been in the CDFI space. He's trained over several hundred people in that space. He's going to talk about capital. And then we got Baruti. He's going to be coming out of New Jersey talking about how municipalities and governments are designed and how we need to overcome some of the barriers and obstacles that we think are barriers and obstacles and turn it around so we can control our communities. So it's just going to be an interesting conversation, yeah.
So with that, I mean, can you just give us the light note? The main purpose of that is it to basically help the up and coming businesses, or those that are small that are working right now that need to get something to give them a little boost to keep moving?
I'm in my 60s. I'm 67. So everything that I'm doing is for the next generation. And at this time, we need to create our own ecosystem. We got to create our own platform. We can't depend on people to do all these great things for us if we can't build our own. And this is part of that. Change the mindset, focus on what you need to do or what you can do, and then leverage those other resources. And so what I'm telling people is this is an opportunity for you to come in a room with like-minded people. And it's not anything new. It's been done before. But we're going to create a destination for people to come into and look at how do we put together capital to grow businesses. We got to do that. This is a global kind of thing. It's not just domestic. We're competing against the world.
Yes.
And if we're competing against the world, we got to act like we're competing against the world, and we got to want to play like we're competing against the world. So that's where my focus is. Always, everybody say, man, you've been doing this a long time. You're still, absolutely I am. And I'm not telling people you have to be super wealthy to do this. You need to be to take care of your basic needs: food, clothing, shelter, and education, and all the other stuff.
Right.
You can move to the next level. Not that difficult.
So how do you help organizations transform their vision into actionable strategy?
Hard work. I keep going back to that. And Barute Kafil is a young man. He's out of Newark, New Jersey. He's got this book called Capital in the City. And I talked to him the other day, and boy, he's ready to come here and do what he needs to do. But, it's no secret to work. If you look at our history as a people and what we've done and what we've been able to overcome, we can do this. This is in our genes. We were built from a survival kind of platform. I mean, nobody else can do the kind of things we've been able to do. We just need to connect the dots and be able to communicate with each other to figure this out. And we got enough intelligent people across the globe that we can come together and do this. Not hard at all. I think sometimes we allow, like our parents didn't do, they didn't allow you to make excuses. I can't do it. No, my mother told me, don't ever say that. I don't want to hear that. You can do this, and you need to say that. And so whatever we speak it needs to, we need to realize that it can come true. And, every words are powerful things.
Yes.
So we got some smart young people right now. I see them across the globe. They're always on LinkedIn. They're on Instagram. They're on some of these social media. There's some smart people out there.
Yes.
But we gotta determine, pick your battles and focus on that. Don't try to conquer everybody's situation. Conquer the one right in front of you.
What makes your facilitation and consultation approach unique?
I don't know if I really have I have a system, but my system is I'm a great listener. And so when somebody's talking to me and they're asking me questions, I'll sit there for 5 or 10 minutes and listen to them. Because most of the time people are so stressed out, nobody listens to them.
Wow.
You come home every day, you want to I find in myself, I'll come home, I'm here by myself. I'm like, who do I talk to? Everybody else is talking to me, but I got to find somebody I can vent sometimes as well and share information sometimes as well. And so people, when you're in these big companies, when you're the only one, who are you communicating with? And so when they call me, I'm listening to them. I want to hear your story for the day. And then I'll share. If you ask me a question, I'll give you an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try to shove it down their throats.
So how do you measure success when working with government agencies or nonprofits?
That's a good question. Government is a different kind of animal because you got so many layers of it. But I would say from a political standpoint, I've been able to get in front of elected officials to have conversations with them from that side of the equation, and also from the sort of bureaucracy side when you got to deal with city managers and staff people who are making policy and those kinds of things, along with whether it's council or county commission or school board members. You have to really get inside of the room. And sometimes what I used to do was I used to go to council meetings and just sit there. Because you know what I did? Studying their body language. So when topics came up, I just sit there and just watch them. Watch their responses. Watch how they move. Watch how the staff reacts to them. And I did that for a long time. I had council members saying, why do you even come to council? I said, I enjoy it. I just want to listen to what people are talking about. So when I approach them, they understand exactly how I can approach them, and I know exactly what their response is going to be. I got really, really good at that.
What trends are you seeing in MWBE and MBE program development?
I think we need to flip it over. I think we got to find some models that work, and we're going to have to model that across the country. We're taxpayers. I think number one, when we started the Greensboro Business League, my thoughts were we're paying taxes into a system, but we're getting less than 2 to 3% return, and we're getting no public contracts. There was an article that came out 2 days ago about Donald Trump and his supporters. His supporters gave him $400 million. He gave them $50 billion in contracts. Okay, that to me makes a whole lot of sense. Hate him or whatever you want to do. I mean, some people not in love with, but that's how business is. That's how they look at business. If I'm going to pay into a system, I'm going to give you an investment. I would expect to have something in return. Too many times we vote for people, put them in office. They give us nothing but lip service. Whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent, you cannot allow a person that you put your vote, which is an investment behind, and they not give you anything in return that's going to impact your community or impact it doesn't make sense. And so I walk in the door like that. Listen, I don't want to hear all the other noise. You got an $800 million budget, or whatever that budget is. That's part of my equity. That's a fair trade. That's a fair trade. If it's not, we're on the wrong moon.
I agree with you 500%.
Yeah.
I agree with you 500% because, that vote means more than you can ever imagine. But how in the hell can you expect me to vote for you each and every time, but I get nothing in return?
Look, the United States was built on this culture. I was watching history movie documentary the other day on Teddy Roosevelt. And I said to myself, this guy, the way they describe him, he sounds like Donald Trump. I mean,
yes, very much so.
He was wealthy. He came from a wealthy family, and he did what he wanted to do. And he wanted to be president 3 times in a row. I'm like, this sounds like a broken record. So we have to take control of our environment and our culture, and we've got to master that. Even if we have to create our own municipalities, we got to do what we got to do. But we got to understand how the chess game is being played. And you can't allow people to sit on the dais and they'd say, oh, well, I'll get to you later. No, you get to me today. In a special kind of way.
So how do you help organizations strengthen their outreach to minority-owned businesses?
That's a $1 trillion question. One of the things I learned is if you're not dealing with, I'll say, Black-owned companies every day, it's tough to do. And you have to put systems in place to do that. My 30-some years of going up and down the East Coast from Virginia to Florida, talking to Black-owned business, I did it every day. So we were programmed. My team and my part, we were programmed. That's what we were doing. So every day we did that. And so it wasn't something we had to think about. That's what we did. And so you got to put that same kind of process, even in curriculum. You got to put that same process in place in order to do that and drive the culture like you drive movements, like the civil rights movement and some of these other movements, the woke movement. You got to do that. And I think that's where we are right now. We don't have a choice. And the time is ticking.
So what role does data play in your consulting work?
Very important. You got to know the numbers. We $2 trillion in spending power in America. We don't need anybody else with that kind of money, quite frankly. And so we could invest in places we need to invest in. We have 55%, 56% of the Black population that lives in the Southeast and throughout the Southwest. We can corner that market. So we corner that market, corner the HBCUs we have. We put that ecosystem together with the businesses and what we're doing and look at the diaspora as well. I think we can make some connections. And look, we need to be convincing some of those rich kings and queens in Africa that they need to invest in America. And they need to invest in the Black community. Why not? Right. If that's what you're committed to.
Right. So, then just thinking about that though, with those pockets that you're just talking about, HBCUs and so forth, all these different areas, what would you propose be done as to bring all of this together as one? Because I think as we look at them from the separate perspective, from the wide lens, that ecosystem that you mentioned, it does exist. It's just not together. How can we do that?
We're going to have to design it. I mean, it can be designed. I think some of us are working on that now, whether you do it through technology or whatever you do it. We got to put the pieces together. And first of all, we just got to say we're going to do it. No more, well, I don't think it can be done, or I don't want those people in the room with me. Exactly. I want people who want to win with me. And if you want to lose, you're not going to be in here with me. You got to go someplace else. But when you come back and you get your mind right, then we can work together. But some people, everybody doesn't fit at the same time. It is what it is. We got to do what we got to do. And look, again, the clock is ticking for all of us. So we got to make it happen.
What is the most rewarding part of being a business advisor?
Seeing people become successful with the advice that I share with them. I'm learning from them just like they're learning from me. You know, I work with a number of people. They just want to, again, some people just want to be heard. And they want you to expound on what they already know what they're going to do. You don't have to really tell them a whole lot. But they just want to say, you know what, I've been thinking about such and such, you know, and I don't know if I really should do this. And you might say, well, maybe you should try it, you know, and I'll help you. And so they're looking for support. And I think everything that we've done as a people, we've always been the last to be looked at in this world.
Yeah, but that's consistently though. That's consistently, and I think you know, just you know, I'm sorry, I just want to have one more follow up on that is because, you know, when you mention, you know, the spending power, you know, of trillions of dollars, but they're nothing primarily in most of the communities but trash and garbage. How does that work? How does that even exist?
Somebody's got to clean it up. A lot of businesses have been started in communities that look like they're totally impoverished. They don't have a chance in hell. And somebody always comes out with a great idea and turns things around. Ideas start in the most desolate places in the world. You know, it's not always perfect. We don't always have perfect scenarios. Sometimes you have to create your own solution. You know what I mean? And you know, I didn't know what was going to happen with the black people. I was driving up down the road, didn't know what the world was going to happen. I'm setting up appointments in Columbia. I'm 6 hours away. You know, I had no idea these people say yes. You know, some of these people said no, but I kept doing what I had to do. And you got to have that kind of tenacity and that kind of stick-to-itiveness, that kind of willpower, that kind of mindset to overcome whatever it is. I tell people, when you want to do something, you find a way to do it. And it starts between your two ears. You know, you got to think like you want to do it. You got to act like, my mama said, you got to look, you know, you got to look like you somebody. Right. You know, you got to dress up like you somebody. Don't come in with those raggedy jeans on. You know, put some iron on those clothes. And, you know, if you don't know how to sew, I'll teach you how to sew and stitch up a shirt or mend some socks. Folk, we got to get back to that. That's what got us here.
Yes.
And what people, you know, we need people in corporate America, just like we need people as plumbers and electricians and carpenters and people driving trucks. We need all of that to have a community. And so once we figure that out, that we all can share in the wealth of our work, we're much better off.
So let's move over to your publishing, media, and Black Pages USA. Can you tell us what motivated you to create Black Pages USA?
I think the gentleman out of Richmond, he was calling the office with the Black News Journal and Guide, kept calling there and said he wanted to talk to me. And I was like, I don't really want to talk to you. I'm good here. I like the Black newspaper. I'm doing great things. And then, yeah, I'm telling you, then all of a sudden he invited me to this networking function. I went in there and saw his people he had hired. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think they're going to work out. I mean, they were clean cut, you know, well dressed, but they didn't work out, and they didn't. So I ended up working for him for a couple of years, and I wanted to start my own business and really wanted to become the largest publisher of the Black Pages in the world. in the country, which I did. We had 12 cities from Florida to Virginia. And that was inside of me. There was something about that coming out of Columbia, South Carolina, and Greenview, and then going to Richmond, Virginia. That was part of my culture. And quite frankly, in high school, we used to go around to these black-owned companies, and whether it was a record shop, selling clothes, whatever it was, clubs, we learned. That's what we wanted to do.
So, how did the directory change the landscape for Black-owned businesses?
We were able to convince people that they could work with each other, but also do business across the lines. People weren't really doing business from South Carolina to North Carolina, or North Carolina to Florida, or Florida to Virginia, Georgia. They were all situated in one little pocket. But when we were doing all these markets, we were exposing them to other cities where they could expand their businesses in. So if you were a McDonald's franchise owner and you wanted to let somebody know you were doing this in Columbia or Charleston or Greensboro, North Carolina, whatever it was, we exposed people to that. We had clients who started to buy advertising in 12 markets, which was we had some friends in the media who didn't like us for a while because they thought we were taking their business. I'm calling them name, but we weren't. I mean, we were just beeline focused on creating this marketplace where people could do business and grow. And today, I know lots of people who are still, as a result of the Black pages, are still successful.
So, what are some of the challenges of running a major publication for 30 plus years?
Other than money? Well, you got to sell. You got to sell, and you got to get up every day at the same time. Like some people say, man, you get up and get dressed at the same time every day. You may not even go anywhere, but you're ready to go to work. Yeah. If I have to be in Hampton Roads, I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, I've got to drive to Hampton Roads 4 hours for a meeting at 8 o'clock. I got to be ready. And I did a lot of that for a lot of years in a lot of different cars. And that's what we did. We were hitting it and getting it. Nothing could stop us. Zero.
So, how did the Black Expo Tour expand your impact across the Southeast?
It gave us another platform for our customers. They could now go into a convention center or an arena and set up shop and sell businesses one-on-one and, brand their products. We bring in celebrity guests. We bring in major companies who wanted to sponsor, the big companies wanted to be a part of that because, we buy their products anyway. Why not invest in it? And so that was another area that gave us a chance to grow and understand our customer base. They loved it.
So, what moments from the Expo Tour stand out as defining milestones?
I think the impact that we made in those markets, and people today still have, this mental, I would say, capacity to understand why was that important for them at that particular time, and why we were able to grow our businesses and come up with new ideas. It was magnificent. I was just looking at some old clips before I started talking to you with some of the people that we had as guests. I mean, from T.D. Jakes to Earl Graves to Nia Long to Lisa Ray. I mean, we had so many people, LL Cool. I mean, we just had lots of people who came in to talk about the impact that we were making in the community and across the globe. And it made us think that we were connected to people like Black Enterprise and Essence Magazine and some of those folk, Ebony. I mean, we were right there. Yeah.
How did you build trust? How did you build trust with business owners across multiple states?
That's a good question. First of all, we had a great team of people. If you don't have a great team, you can't do it. I mean, just, nobody can do it by themselves. I can't do it by myself. I got to have a great team in order to do what I need to do. And we had a great team of people who were trained up. They were ready to go, and they could outsell anybody. And those people in those markets trusted them. I'll give you a quick story. I was in a line it was about a year or two ago when Kamala Harris was running for president. And I went to Charlotte and I was standing in line outside like everybody else. And this lady turned around and said, "I know you from someplace, don't I?" I said, "No, I don't know. I don't know if you know." She said, "Yes, I do. I know you." I said, "Oh, no." She said, "You're the Black Pages." I was like, "Okay, you got me."
Oh, man.
She was right. That happens all the time. All the time.
So now that you have not just only brand recognition, but now people recognize you from a facial perspective. Mm-hmm. How does that make you feel when you go to places such as conventions or expos, or just in general in just your everyday life? How does that make you feel to know that people know who you are?
I mean, it's good to know that, but I'm so focused, Charles, on what I need to be doing. I was telling somebody the other night, I don't have time for a whole lot of stuff. That's good. I'm happy that it happens and people can make the acknowledgement. But at the end of the day, am I making an impact and changing lives? If I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job. We got organizations out here that I'm in the fight with, the Black Chamber in North Carolina, several Black chambers, the NAACP, several other business organizations, and people are doing some good stuff out here. And we need to recognize that it's good to be in the celebratory mode and get those acknowledgments. That's fine. But folks, we got work to do. And I have fun doing what I'm doing because I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And I'm committed to what I'm doing. And so when it's over, it's over. Somebody else has got to do it.
Yeah, well, will they?
They don't have a choice. They have a choice.
Oh,
yeah.
I would always say that. Yeah, well, because I mean, in just taking this fight, a lot of us want to fight this fight and trying to fight this fight, but it seems like, and it doesn't make you stop, but it just seems like there are an enormous amount of folk out of the wrong places that do not want to take up the fight. Why do you think that's so?
One of the things I've been looking at is in a lot of foreign countries, they have brought people in to retrain the workforce. And I think we've got to bring some people in to retrain our workforce and get us focused on what we need to be doing. And that's part of it. We have to train people up. They're not going to do it on their own. It's kind of like the military. When you go in the military, you don't have a whole lot of options.
Nope.
Either you're going to fall in line and do what you have to do, or you're going to be out of here. And that's some of the best. Yeah, exactly. That's some of the best training you can get. And I really think if you look at these companies like Japan and China and some of these areas who've been able to grow their economies, they brought people in to train them up. Because some of those products back in the day were cheap. We looked at those products as inferior. And so we got to do the same thing in our communities if we want to be able to compete at the highest level. The same way you play sports. You go into different communities, you play against the best. We got to play against the best, and we got to practice against the best.
So, what did you learn about the power of visibility in Black commerce?
That's a good question. Reading, Black history, Mr. Wright, high school, opened my eyes to certain things that I wasn't familiar with. When you start talking about, Black leaders, whether it's Booker T, Marcus Garvey, Mary McLeod Bethune, whoever it was, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner. I mean, I interviewed a person the other day that I'm doing a book, and he's the fourth or fifth or sixth generation of Nat Turner.
Oh, wow.
And it just floored me when he said it. I was like, what? I said, I've known you all these years and we never talked about this. Yeah. Southampton County, Virginia. So
I'd love to meet him and have him on the show.
Oh my God. And look, he was one of my mentors in Norfolk. He was the person that I could go in his office and sit down and talk to him. And he hired me to do some consulting work. That was one of the first gigs I had with him. And he was one of the biggest realtors in that area. It works.
Yeah.
If they like you. If they don't like you. Yeah. You got to be likable sometime.
We discussed, when we chatted before the show, that we do Black History 365.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked you, who were the most influential persons in your life and your career? You mentioned to me it was your grandfather, your grandmother, and your mother. Can you tell us why are your grandfather, your grandmother, and your mother the most influential figures in your life?
I got to add my father in there too. I think later on, I began to realize, even though, because we have a lot of families that may be broken or split up, you can learn from all phases of life. And, my mother, because, that's who I talked to every day. I mean, she pushed us to get our education. She pushed us to be smart. She pushed us to do the work. She pushed us not to be lazy. You're not going to say those kind of words. You're going to say, yes, I can do it. And I'm going to do it. You don't say, none of that stuff came out of your mouth unless you wanted to get popped. So she was, and I knew she was dealing with a lot of challenges because, just being a single parent mother with two boys. And so we had to look at all the other stuff that was going on. So yeah, you saw your grandfather and my grandmother, what they were able to do with little or no education. Those are the stories that we heard about coming up. These are the stories that these young people coming behind us need to hear about. You can't take that off the table, because if you take that off the table, you're going to take all of your family tree off the table. When I can go back, and I did the research last week, my great grandfather was like 1872.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that, I was like, wow. And he had like 7 kids. My grandfather and grandma had 14 kids. So you have to go back and look at your history, your genealogy and all that stuff, and be able to say to yourself, this is where I come from. Don't be afraid of that. That's who you are.
Yes, exactly.
That's going to help you navigate through and every time I look at these history programs and look at how these people, hate them or like them, how they did what they had to do, they didn't care. They had to survive, and we need to understand we need to survive.
What stories from your? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Necessary.
You
Yeah.
know, I think that because so many people are afraid of how people actually interpret that they don't exercise what that phrase truly means.
Well,
Because you know how people take it, they take it, they change it, and they churn it up and say, "Oh, you said this," and that's not really how that works. But
no.
I agree with you that it is by any means necessary.
There was a guy named George Sabira who's deceased. I think George was out of St. Louis or Chicago, and he wrote this book called Getting Black Folks to Sell. And I bought that book years ago, while I was working at the Journal and Guide newspaper. And you know what, man? That book was powerful because he was telling how you need to sell how do we need to sell to black folk and how do we need to sell to each other and why selling was important. And I talked to George a couple of times by phone. And so it was things like that. I would pick up books and read them. And even if you didn't read the whole book, read just enough of it so you can get something out of that book. And so I applied some of those practices. I did what everybody else did. I worked a lot of jobs. I threw newspapers. I worked in a restaurant. I cleaned floors. I mean, I did it all. I didn't have an easy life, and sometimes I didn't know if I was going to make it, quite frankly. Sold retail. I did everything. So I think you have to do as much as you can in order to survive and find the right thing that fits.
Okay, Gary, you was just frozen for a few minutes there.
Yeah, I saw the little connection button. Yeah, technology.
So,
The
what
data, it's
stories
probably
from?
the data centers.
Yeah, it is them data centers. It is them data centers, and
Yeah.
oh, that, by the way, when we get done with this, I want to tell you about that story that you sent me because
Mhm.
that was a good story. I want to thank you for that.
Okay.
What stories from your family history continue to inspire your work?
Oh wow. I just saw a couple of my aunts, uncle-in-law, and some other people a couple of weeks ago at a funeral, and you know, all of my relatives were independent quite a bit. They all did something. My uncle, who's deceased, was in Baltimore. Is at on his own mechanic shop. They all were workers. They worked, and they all wanted to be independent. They never wanted to work for somebody else. They worked for themselves because that's what my granddaddy did. He didn't have a job. His job was to make sure that that farm got taken care of. And as my aunt used to tell me, when they went out to the tobacco field and got that tobacco and went to the marketplace to where they could raffle it off, auction it off, they were the last ones to even get a shot. I'm serious. They sometimes they didn't even sell the product. That's
You
South
know,
Carolina.
I always wondered though, why is the Carolinas and Virginia? Why was that land so plentiful when you talk about tobacco?
Why was the lamb so plentiful? Plentiful?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because they've been doing that ever since the beginning of time. That's where tobacco has come from, but it's been enriched land.
This
Where they got that from.
good soil. When you got the good soil that can grow good crops, like Virginia and North Carolina and South Carolina, you grow good crops in this soil. And then you got people who understand how to grow crops. Africans came over with skills. That's why they brought them over here, kidnapped them. They came over with certain skills that, you know, some of the Europeans didn't have. I mean, that's honest God truth.
So, how do you honor their legacy through your leadership? That's your family.
That's a very good question. I think I can continue to do what I'm doing now and remind myself that I come from good stock.
That's what they call it.
Yeah, yeah.
What does Black history mean to you as a business strategist?
You can't do without it. It's like American Express used to say, you can't do without it. You know, when I was in the funeral a couple of weeks ago down in Manning, Alkaloo, South Carolina, and I was walking out of the church, and this man stopped me and he said, "Are you a McCants?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I could tell. I could tell." And so people recognize who you are, who your family was, even on my father's side, my grandparents on their side. Those people worked hard. And they didn't raise any lazy people. Trust me, you had to work. I mean, this stuff now is different. I mean, kids can come in now and tell you what they ain't gonna do. Nah, you ain't doing that in my house.
You know, that is the one thing that I honestly can say that I'm proud of that time in which I was born and raised, because being a generation gap baby of 1966, you know, you get to learn what it was prior to coming into the new era and what that standard was going to be. Because when your
Mm-hmm.
family set a standard, that standard is set and you must adhere to that. There ain't no gray area, there ain't no ands, ifs, or buts about it. You know, when you mentioned washing walls, you know, just like that is the craziest thing in the world, but like, go wash the walls. And you sit on like, why are we washing walls? What that's gonna do? Well, you doing it.
Yep. Hey, look, and when the washing machine broke, you had to put those clothes in the tub and wash them there. You know, they had to wash. You had to do that. I mean, it was, and hang them on the clothesline. That was work. There was no idle time.
But you see, we learned.
Exactly.
We learned.
Mm-hmm.
But so
Exactly.
that's the thing that's missing from our kids today, that they're missing a real serious source of what it is to be more than just independent, but to be critical thinkers. These kids don't critically
Right.
think today.
Well, they have we've taught them in a way to do different things, and it's a different era. I think they have it. Let me say they have imagination.
That they do.
Look, you know, even though when you start going back and looking at things, when you used to get up on Saturday mornings and you did your work and you would watch cartoons for hours and hours or whatever it was, and then after you did that, you had to go back to doing something. And you know, you had community, and we didn't have a whole lot of options. We couldn't live in all these different neighborhoods. You live with each other.
Yeah.
So that means you had to deal with each other. You went to church with each other if you went to church. And the people in your community were your mentors. And there was a village that raised you.
Yes, it was.
You know, and the schools, the grade schools, the principal, he already been told by your parents, if he does anything, you go ahead and take care of him. There wasn't no calling somebody downtown to come pick up my child.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wasn't none of that. So, all good stuff.
So, how do you incorporate cultural understanding into your consulting work?
I think it's easy. I think the environment that I've come up through with HBCUs, Virginia Union University, living in a culture that's understands diversity, equity, and inclusion. understand that if we all work together, we come out better. You know, so I tell people like sports, it's the best people play and the best people win. And that's how our economy should work. We got the best of the best working together.
Right. So, final question for you. What historical figures inspire your approach to economic empowerment?
Oh, wow. You're talking about from a historical perspective, Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Denmark Vesey, Madam C.J. Walker, all these people, and the people in my community who own stores, a little candy shop or a gas station. Those folk. I didn't have to go far off the book to go find a book. They were sitting right in my neighborhood. I mean, Bumpsy's record shop. I mean, he had his own record shop in downtown Columbia. I mean, you could go in there and buy you a little record or something, 8-track, as we used to call them. Those are the people that I looked at. People that were selling little stuff, and educators. I mean, the educators were brilliant. They kept us in line. They were smart as I don't know what. And they lived in the community with us. So we didn't have a choice. So when you walk to school, you walking by your teacher's house.
Yes. Yes.
And they wasn't having it.
And see, but I think that's one of the major things that's missing when we talk about community. Because the community, as you said, the community raised you. And believe me, you didn't have to get home to get to get that butt whooped.
Exactly.
Because I mean, it was like everybody was doing what needed to get done in order to make this a much better place.
Exactly. And the football coaches and the basketball coaches were all in on it. so if you did something wrong, you were gonna get it. Yeah. Yep.
So in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement that you'd like to leave for our audience? Tell them how they could connect with you via social media, your website, the information on how to go and find the Black pages and join and list, all of that good stuff.
I tell people just email me. You can email me at my first name is Gerry at blackpagesusa.com. Black Pages, BlackPagesusa.com. Or you can send me an email at Gerry McCants, GerryMcCants@gmail.com. And that's the best way to get me, and then I could provide you whatever you need after that.
And do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement for the audience?
I think prayer is good for people. You need to find some inner connection that drives you every day, and you need to find something you need. I say 3 things when I get up in the morning. Today is the best day of my life. I control my own mind, and I'm grateful for what I have. I say that when I get up. You got to find something, some messaging that will drive you every day to get up to do what you're doing, because you can get stagnant and you can get caught up in other stuff, but you got to focus. And I tell people to stay focused, stay motivated, surround yourself with the right people, and have some fun. I mean, nothing wrong with having a little fun, travel, do whatever what makes you happy. But understand at the end of the day what the goal is and what impact you're going to make and what you're going to leave as your legacy.
Well, I want to thank you for being here, and I appreciate you taking some time out to be with us. This was truly great and informative, and was also some things that I hope that people learn that whatever we do, we have to have, a standard, and we have to have a wherewithal and a get up and go attitude, and the ability to know that we can do whatever we set out to accomplish.
Absolutely.
I want to thank each and every one of you that stayed here and watched the show this evening. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your support. I would appreciate it if you guys could support us by any of you that's watching any of the YouTube channels that you're watching. If you would please take the time out to subscribe and enable all notifications, which would allow you to get the notifications when the shows are about to go live. You will also have the opportunity to go back and watch each and every last one of our great guests that's left some words of wisdom and encouragement and teachings as to how we can better build our communities and how we can be much better people. So in closing, let me close with this monologue. Tonight, we witnessed the power of legacy, leadership, and long-term commitment. Gerry McCants has spent his life building bridges between businesses and opportunity, between communities and resources, between history and the future. His work reminds us that economic empowerment is not just strategy, it is service, it is vision, it is love for the people who came before us and responsibility to those who will come after. Mr. McCants, thank you for your decades of dedication, your unwavering advocacy, and your blueprint for substantiatable Black business excellence. This has been episode 88 of America in Black and White. We honor the past, we elevate the present, and we build the future together. I'm your host, Charles King. You all have a great evening. We will see you tomorrow.